everyone, my name is Nathan Jones, and if you're new here, welcome. I like to talk about all things movies, specifically Blu-rays, and welcome to my film journey, where each week I have been covering the things that I have been watching and picking up, all things physical media, mostly movies, and lately I have been in a crazy situation. As you probably noticed from the title, this is weeks 49 and 50, so I wasn't able to make a video last week. A couple of things happened. I was able to go up to Columbia, Missouri and Kansas City, Missouri to see my friends and hang out with them, and that was a lot of fun. We'll talk about those trips here a little bit later, but as I was coming back down, the power went out in my hometown where I'm at, and I was out of power for like 2.5 days, so it was kind of annoying, and I planned on making a video to kind of cover those trips, but here we are, and now we're kind of doing a super episode. So with that being said, I have been picking up a lot of titles on my travels. I've been watching a lot as well. Even despite all the power outage that I've had, I've been able to survive like the Oregon Trail times. But before we jump into the things that I picked up and the things that I've watched, I would love to know in the comment section down below what you have been doing for the past 2 weeks. Have you been watching some really good television shows, reading any good books? I would love to know in the comment sections. So anyway, I will talk with you soon, and now let's jump into the things that I picked up. All right, so before we jump into the movies that I picked up, I actually have 2 books to show and a record to talk about, and I am pretty excited about these things because I've been wanting to read a lot more this year. I've kind of taken a little bit of a break, just life happens, and I've just been in moods where I don't want to read, and sometimes I do. But these 2 books have spoke to me mainly because I had a conversation with a coworker who I really respect and actually enjoy. There's one of the few people in my office that actually knows anything about film or can talk about movies in general. But he had brought up Roger Ebert and how much he enjoyed him growing up, and it just made me think of, you know, going back to a lot of the Siskel and Ebert stuff that I used to kind of dig into a little bit, but not too much because I didn't grow up with it too much. But I did see the Life Itself documentary, and so I finally picked up the book, right? So the book that the movie is based off of, the memoir of Roger Ebert himself, just talking about his love of movies and his passion for it, and kind of going through that. So this is going to be really exciting to dive into that. I feel like this is going to just be really emotional for me. I'm sure for the people who are watching this at home now, I hope the same thing, because I feel like a lot of us here are just movie lovers, and he was one of those people I feel like kind of bridged the gap between a critic and somebody like me, right? Somebody who just really enjoys movies. So this is really exciting to jump into. And another Roger Ebert book I bought was one of his great movies titles. I think there's like 3 or 4 of these, but this is like a compilation of some great movies that he would recommend, and like it's just excerpts from like kind of what he wrote on. Like there's Network right there. There's The Maltese Falcon, Duck Soup, great comedy. But regardless, I'm excited to dive into this. I actually kind of want to watch all the movies prior to reading all of this because I don't want to spoil myself. I feel like I've seen like 85-90% of this, but who knows? I've seen those movies that I just talked about, but I'm excited to just read more and kind of dig more into Roger Ebert's work. Have any of you read these books? Let me know what you think down in the comment section. So, all right, so next I want to talk about a record that I picked up. It's a soundtrack, so it is technically for a movie. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. It's one of the best horror movies of all time, directed by one of my favorite horror directors, and also scored by one of the best composers of all time. And I'm talking about John Carpenter's The Thing, and the score by Ennio Morricone, who is immense and amazing. And also John Carpenter is also just a really great composer as well. I feel like he definitely dabbled in this a little bit. But here is the Waxworks vinyl edition that I was able to pick up in Columbia, where I was up at a record store, and I saw this on the shelf. And I remember this had just been released, and so I had no intention of buying it, but I saw it on the shelf, and I'm like, you know what, let's get it. And so let's actually open this up. I really love the artwork of this thing because it's a lot of original artwork, kind of recreation of a scene from the movie, right? A pretty big one here, of course, as they discover the alien ship that comes down. It even comes with a poster, which is honestly a little disappointing. I don't love this poster. It's pretty minimalistic. I'll definitely put it up still because it's one of my favorite movies. But there it is with the opening shot of the helicopter chasing a dog. Is it a dog? Probably not. But the coolest thing in here is the waxwork vinyl itself. It's on, I think, 180 gram, and this is the thing. It is just gorgeous. It looks like pure ice. Like, look at that. That is one of the prettiest vinyls that I have in my collection, and I can't stop looking at it. It is just layered so well, and I just love the way this looks. But I love this movie. I love the director and the composer, and I love the score. And it's kind of crazy to me that I've never owned this score before, because I own like 5 or 6 copies of the thing. So it makes sense for me to finally have the soundtrack. So has anyone picked this up? Has anyone gave this a spin yet? Let me know how it sounds. I still have not spun it yet. I've been listening to ABBA a little bit lately, and so I've been in a different mood and headspace. All right, so before we jump into the movies that I picked up over the last few weeks, let's actually talk about a movie party that I was able to go to at the Alamo Drafthouse, which they do this every month. I think usually a couple movies they have a couple of movie parties for. I've been to a couple here and there. I've been to Step Brothers over the years, Big Trouble in Little China, and I finally went to the Midsommar release, and this is actually the 4K from A24's line of the film itself. This is the director's cut, but it was the normal cut when I was able to watch in the theater, and it actually came with quite a bit of cool knickknacks. So if anyone's not familiar with Alamo movie parties, they usually give you props, and those props are kind of like in the vein of Rocky Horror Picture Show, where you can interact with the movie in some case, or you can be loud, or you know it's meant for people who have seen the movie, right? But for some reason, this movie, it's kind of weird to be a little loud to. There's a couple of scenes, of course, in this movie that you can definitely engage with as an audience, but for the most part, you're quiet, and honestly, I was happy with that. But here are the props lists right here. I actually kind of took this away from them. It's like next to their drink menu, but it came with a few things, right? It came with a little plush bear keychain, actually, that is definitely associated with some burning at the end of the movie, which, speaking of burning, they also give you an Alamo Drafthouse origami paper so you can build your own tent for that burning. And there's the instructions right there. I haven't done that, but definitely related to the ending of the movie. It also comes with this tea bag, which is just a normal tea bag with their kind of logo on it, but definitely some psychedelic hallucinogenic things go on in this movie, so that was kind of their, why they gave you some tea. So I haven't done that yet, but my most important and favorite thing that they got was the Mayday Queen little crown right here, this little crown of thorns, or I guess crown of flowers, I suppose. The Mayflower Queen got the little crown here. I'm definitely going to be putting this next to the movie, like just probably on top of it, but just really cool. I love this. Florence Pugh is fantastic in this movie. In fact, everybody is. It's one of my favorite Ari Aster films. That and Hereditary there's two of the night and day type of cycle of horror films. But it was a really fun movie party. I really enjoyed it. I'd give it a 4.5 out of 5. It's a movie that has only gotten better every single time I watch it. I really enjoy it. I've actually watched it the last 3 years in a row around the summer solstice, which is when this movie party was. And so it's really exciting to do that every year. I feel like I'm going to make this a tradition, and I hope I can seek out those experiences more and more with Midsommar. So yeah, I had a really fun movie party with my tea, my bear, and my little crown. All right, so now let's jump into the titles that I picked up. I actually was able to go to Barnes & Noble up in Columbia and Kansas City, and actually there was a couple of sales going on there. There was Radiance, there was an Indicator sale, and there was also a Criterion sale, which is what I was going up there for initially, which I did not expect the other things happening. So let's actually talk about Radiance, because I actually picked up a few titles from them for their sale, and I'm pretty excited about these titles. And none of them I have seen, so I can't really talk much about them, but I will cover them later on the channel once I do. But the first one I have is from Todd Solondz. This is actually the first 4K title, I believe, that Radiance has put out, and that is Palindromes, which is a movie that I think a lot of people are talking about right now. This is definitely one that is selling out really quick, or I think maybe Radiance is putting it out again. I'm not as familiar with it, but I am really excited about this. I've seen his other films, Happiness and the Welcome to the Dollhouse, which is another Radiance title, and I've enjoyed both of them. They're really dark coming-of-age stories, so I have a feeling this is too. So there's that. And then there's two Japanese films I got. one that I was just really intrigued by the cover, and I also know this director because they directed a film, The Ballad of Narayama, which is in the Criterion Collection, and that is The Eel. And so I'm excited for this. This came out in 1997. Looks like a thriller of sorts. Don't know much about it, but it looks really intriguing. The other Japanese film actually is one that my friend Ryan Disconnected, who I was able to go see up in Kansas City alongside KB Loves Movies. At least Ryan told me about this movie. This is a Japanese film from the 70s, 1977. It is The Tale of Sorrow and Sadness, and this is an exciting one. I actually, I made a joke about, well, the title of this just speaks to me because it reminds me of my life. That's a little dark humor there. But besides that, it looks really exciting. And the last title I got is an Italian film from the 60s, one that kind of looks like a slice of life kind of family drama of sorts, and is directed by Luigi Comamici, and that is Misunderstood. So this looks really intriguing. The cover alone just looked really interesting because it has two young boys kind of at this, I guess, funeral and trying to figure out something. This looks really intriguing. I don't know much about it, like I said. Now, those are the Radiance titles I picked up. There was also an Indicator, like I said, sale going on, and there was not very many Indicator titles, and a lot of them I already owned. So, but this is one that actually was a gift from KB, so thank you, buddy, for doing this for me. But they both recommended me watching this movie, even though they said it's a really tough watch. It is The Brute, and I'm really excited about this. But it's got Sarah Douglas and Julian Gloves in it. Glover, I think. Yeah, Julian Glover. Saying gloves because this was cut off with the 50% off sticker. But yeah, I'm excited for this one, although this looks like an intense one. So that's going to be a movie I'm going to watch a little later. But I was able to get this title, and I knew he would pick this because we're both in love with Alfred Hitchcock, and actually picked up the title My Name is Alfred Hitchcock, which is the documentary from Mark Cousins, who I am a big fan of. I love his story of film series, and I also have his book. But I like that director slash documentarian. So I'm excited to jump into this because I've pretty much watched most of Hitchcock's works, and so this is going to be really exciting to kind of dive into another aspect of him. Now, the other thing that I got besides the Criterion releases is actually an adjacent to Criterion, the Janus Contemporary line, which actually just, I think, got a name change. I think in the fall they're going to actually officially change its name. I think that's a lot to do with the letter C because it holds a lot of power from Criterion. But I was able to get this French film, this contemporary French film from 2023. It is The Beast, which I am a huge fan of. Is it Seyado? I think is how you say her name. I don't know. It's French. But I'm a big fan of her and her work, but this is a really intriguing premise. It's set in the 2044s, and AI has taken over. I don't know much about it, but it looks incredibly intriguing. And this is only $15. I love the Janus Contemporary line, or whatever it's going to be named in the future, because it gives a lot of smaller movies, or the movies that are coming out right now, just art house films, a shot to be on physical media. And like that is a big deal to me. So yeah, excited for this one. All right, so now let's jump into the Criterion titles. I actually got some upgrades here. I got a few upgrades on 4K. I've seen a few of these. Out of the 7, I've seen only 2, but I am really excited about these. So let's actually first talk about the ones that I've upgraded. The first one is The Wages of Fear from the 50s. This is 1953. It is in French, Spanish, Italian, English, and German. It is a French film, though, and this is from Henry Georges Clouzot, who I am a big fan of. Obviously, he is in the collection several titles, and this is just one of the best build-up stories of all time in terms of intensity. And it's about these two gentlemen who are on this really risky and dangerous mission to move a bomb. I think it's move some nitroglycerin through a mountain route. And it is really intense, just the build-up, but also just having kind of a laid-back kind of story here. There is another title that I do not have in front of me, which I think I will cover next week because it's coming in the mail, that came out in the 70s, which is one that I think everyone's picking up, which is The Title. But it was just really cool to get this on 4K. It's got some new artwork here, which is exciting, so I'm excited for that. But it's been a while since I've seen this movie, and I really remember enjoying it quite a bit. So I'm going to watch this alongside the mystery film, which I bet you can't, figure out, I'm sure. But we'll talk about that one next week. But the other film that I have that I upgraded from Blu-ray to 4K is one of my favorite films from Paul Schrader, and that is Mishima: A Life in 4 Chapters. And my God, this is just a beautiful release. But also, I mean, this is the same release that it is on the Blu-ray, but it is a little bit thicker because it does come with the Blu-ray and the 4K. Same exact internals though. It comes with a booklet and nothing necessarily crazily new. But I love how beautiful this movie is, and so looking at it up on 4K is something I definitely wanted to do. So I wanted to upgrade that, and yeah, gonna watch that very soon, I'm sure. Now here are the titles that I have not seen, so I can't really speak too much on, but definitely have some thoughts on why I picked them up, and they're intriguing. The first one is actually 2 short films. This is 32 short films about Glenn Gould right here. This is the 4K release of this, and directed by Francois Garrod. So it is in French, I believe. But this is a portrait of a pianist, Glenn Gould, and explores over 32 vignettes, encompassing everything from dramatic sketches to documentary interviews with avant-garde animation. And I love animation. I think it's definitely something that Criterion is working a little bit better at, to put some animation in here. So definitely was really curious about this, and I also just love music, so the combination of the two goes hand in hand. I mean, Fantasia is my favorite Disney movie, so of course that sounded really interesting to me, even though I'm sure they're not even close to the same thing. But the next movie I got, actually, I'll talk about 2 actually, because these are both directed by Sean Baker, who I've really enjoyed his work. I love Tangerine, Florida Project, and I have read Rocket, but I still have yet to see. And these next 2 I have yet to see as well. So I have a lot of work to do, but I just love Sean Baker as a person. He just seems really, really down to earth and very, very humble. But the first movie is Prince of Broadway, which came out in 2008. So one of his, I guess, earlier films. And I'm really excited about this. This was definitely just Ryan and KB were like, yeah, pick this up. Alongside, of course, the one that a lot of other people are picking up as well, Anora. Now, Anora is a 4K, and it won a bunch of awards last year in multiple categories for a lot of different, different award ceremonies, from I think TIFF all the way up to the Oscars and the Independent Spirits. But really, really excited to watch this movie. You have a great cast here with Mark Edelshin. And of course, we have Mickey Madison, who is just popping off as this amazing actress. And yeah, I love the way this movie feels. I can already tell that this is something that's going to be immensely powerful and something that I'm really excited about. And they actually went all out here with this title release, especially like how difficult. I mean, look at this. There's 3 discs here. There's the 4K. There's the Blu-ray 1 and 2, so there's a lot of special features on here with Sean Baker, of course, and then of course there is like a magazine with Mickey Madison in it, and yeah, just excited for this, to dive into this. And I've been watching a lot of different interviews with her, and she just seems really, really down to earth, and I've loved her in the few things that I've seen her in, like Scream and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where she loves getting killed by fire in some manner. But Sean Baker, keep making good work, and I'm excited to watch your stuff. Next is an upgrade that I actually have in a collection, but I wanted to get this separately because this is a movie that I have on my list. It's like one of the top movies I want to watch, but I have not watched it just yet because I'm just waiting for a good time. But I know this movie is worth the upgrade, and that is The Umbrellas of Chernobyl. And this movie right here is considered one of the best musicals of all time, a French musical by Jacques Demy, and so ecstatic to have this. Ryan was actually telling me that this is got a really great upgrade, and so really excited for this. This is going to be a beautiful musical, and I'm sure it's going to look gorgeous on 4K. So really excited to have this finally, and actually watch a Jacques Demy film. I have not done that yet, so shame on me. Speaking of French, I guess I watched a lot. I bought a lot of French things apparently. This is actually one that really caught my eye because I really love the cover of this, and I actually saw this in my neck of the woods at a Barnes & Noble. It was before the sale, so I didn't pick it up there. But I got this double feature from Claude Berry, and that's Jean de Floret and Manon of the Spring. And this is a really cool design. I just love that art, right? Like you can just see the artwork, but like it almost looks hand-drawn, like sketched in. You can't really probably tell from the camera itself, but it comes with the Blu-rays of each and the 4Ks of each. So there's 4 discs in here, and it comes with a booklet. But these are films from France, I think, set in the French countryside, in some literary adaptations from Marcel Pagnol. And these are spanning 3 generations of 2 different families. And these movies came out in '86, respectively. Both of them came out in 1986. And in fact, I actually have some friends who talk to me, movie friends that I don't normally, I don't expect them to talk about movies, talked about these movies and said they watched it in class. And I was like, really? And they're like, yeah, that is actually really good. So really excited and ecstatic to watch these. These seem like period pieces, and I love period pieces. So yeah, so that's actually all of the things that I picked up. I got quite a bit of titles over the past 2 weeks. All right, so now let's jump into the titles that I watched for the past few weeks. I was able to watch some TV and also some movies, and I actually was up in Colombia to watch 2 movies with some friends. It's a birthday celebration that we do every year, and it's usually a mystery double feature, and this was a great double mystery for me. And those movies were Dirty Work and The New Kids. And I was able to watch them back to back, which is a weird combo of movies to watch. Both comedic in some sense. At least The New Kids has some comedic over-the-top elements, but we'll jump into that here in a second. First, let's talk about Dirty Work, which is starring Norm Macdonald, which is... I'm a big fan of Norm Macdonald. I've loved his humor and his comedy and the things that he's in for the longest time. And I was saddened to see him pass away a few years back. But it's kind of surprising. I had never seen Dirty Work. And I loved this movie so much because it definitely scratched the Billy Madison, Happy Gilmore, just that late 90s, like really dumb comedy that I like adore and like just really love. And it's just really straight-laced and kind of matter-of-fact. And the fact that it is just so stupid actually drove half the people who watched it kind of mad, or at least bored probably, or just a little upset. It's kind of funny because there was maybe 3 of us out of the 7 who enjoyed it, and the rest of them were just definitely quiet or not really enjoying it that much. But that's fair. It's definitely 14-year-old boy humor, and I grew up a lot with that stuff, so I loved it, and I had a good time. So much so that I actually ordered the Vinegar Syndrome, kind of the horrific looking slipcover of that movie on 4K. Probably overspent money on that for a movie so dumb that definitely doesn't deserve as much, I guess, attention or price point for something like that. But I'm sure it's going to look good, and I'm sure there's a lot of really great special features. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I'd give it a 4 out of 5. Like, that's how much I enjoyed it. It's a movie that I definitely, if you are into that kind of stuff, that's your favorite thing. But if you're not, you might find this to be one of the dumbest things you've ever seen, and that's okay. But I really enjoyed it, even though half the people did not in that room. Now, the other movie that we watched was a little bit more sinister, but also a little bit more over the top. It's actually directed by Sean Cunningham, who directed the first Friday the 13th. So it made sense that The New Kids would be kind of crazy. Definitely this kind of coming of age story set in this small town of these 2 kids who lose their parents at the very beginning of the movie, kind of growing up without parents, or at least they're in school now without parents, and kind of going through a hard time, obviously, but getting bullied and in a very sick and kind of sexist way. A lot of things going on in this movie that are definitely a little out of date, but the way that it kind of transpires is kind of wild, and I'm not going to get really into it. I think it's a movie to watch, But like I said, it's got some mean streak to it, and it definitely has some moments where they are definitely a little dated, but that is of the time. But I'm glad the events that happened unfolded, because they definitely deserved what happened. So that being said, I'd give this movie like a 3.5 out of 5. It's definitely an enjoyable one, but oh my god, I did not expect it to go the directions it did. But yeah, go check out The New Kids if you get a chance. If you don't have a small, like a queasy stomach, I think you should be good. But yeah, go check that movie out, and go watch Dirty Work while you're at it. All right, so now let's actually talk about the movie that kind of left off last week or 2 weeks ago. I picked this up recently, and I finally watched it. I was able to watch Agatha Christie's adaptation of Evil Under the Sun right here, directed by Guy Hamilton, starring a bunch of people in it. Of course, really great ensemble cast from the 80s. This actually, I think, came out in the early 80s, 1981. But what a gorgeous movie! This is set in like real locations. I think in the Mediterranean, at this resort hotel, and Hercule Poirot, who is this detective who is in all the stories from Agatha Christie, coming down to visit and kind of trying to piece together a strangulation / murder that happened on the beach. And it's a gorgeous looking one. I actually want to watch this again just because of how pretty it looks. This movie, definitely just the locations and locales made it a treat. Even if it wasn't as exciting as something like Murders on the Orient Express, or the books themselves, of course. I've read a few. But yeah, in general, this is a pretty fun adaptation. I have not read the book, so I don't know if the book is better. Of course, it probably is. But I'd say this is a solid 3.5 out of 5. All right, so next is a film that I actually picked up over in the UK last year, right around this time, actually. And I was able to pick this up from my good buddy Sam. He actually recommended this. Was actually, I remember this being like the first title maybe I grabbed off the shelf when we were at HMV. No, wait, maybe we were at FOP. Yeah, we were at FOP in London. And this is the title I picked up, Three Burials. Three Burials of Mercedes Estrada, directed and starring Tommy Lee Jones. And this is a really great Western. This is on 101 Films, one of the labels over in the UK. And man, oh man, I did not expect to enjoy this as much as I did. It's a really gritty kind of modern Western of sorts of Tommy Lee Jones, who's on the run from the authorities because his good friend Mercedes Estrada was killed in cold blood. And he actually drags the killer alongside him because he made a promise to return Estrada back to his family burial. I guess the valley that he was born in, and you see that as they go on this adventure. It's kind of a revenge story / retribution story, but it's actually quite good. And Tommy Lee Jones does a really great job directing and acting in this movie. I'd give it a 3.5 out of 5. It's one that I think could easily creep up to a 4. A movie that is definitely worth its weight in gold. So definitely check this movie out. All right, so the next title I have right here is one that I also showed last week. I just picked it up and I watched all the special features, and I adored this movie when it came out, and the multiple times I've seen it since. And now I'm glad it's finally on 4K in this deluxe box set right here. This is The Nice Guys. God, I love this movie. Russell Crowe and Ryan Gosling, directed by Shane Black. This is a great release. In fact, you can see that I'm holding it in here because I actually have the booklet out. I'm actually reading it, and it's a beautiful book. And it's actually like hard. I actually talked about it last week. You could see my unboxing of it. But man, this was just a really fun kind of sleazy, 70s kind of detective story, this buddy cop story of two guys who definitely do not like each other and are definitely both idiots in their own regards as they try to unravel this corrupt thing going on, and they have to team up together just to take it all down. And it is just so much fun. I love this release. It comes with some really cool postcards, but it also just comes with a bunch of special features that I had mentioned. In fact, I actually have the J card, the slip card, with the special features on the back here, and the special features alongside the 4K, mastered, produced from Second Sight and an HDR Dolby Vision with Shane Black. It also has some commentary with Shane Black, which I have not seen just yet, and co-writer Anthony Vagarazzi, moderated by Priscilla Page. But I did watch Knights in Tarnished Armor, a new interview with Shane Black, kind of covering his work on the movie and how long it took him to make this movie. Apparently, he had a lot of this stuff written in like the 2000s, and so it's kind of crazy to see how long it takes to make something like this and get the funding for. Finding an Audience, a new interview with co-producer Ethan Irwin, which was quite good. He also talked about like just the production struggles going into this. 1,000 Cuts, a new interview with director of photography Philip Roselet, which this movie looks gorgeous. It's definitely, I think they filmed this in Georgia, I want to say, and so he talked a lot about trying to make it look like LA in the 70s, and it was really cool going down those different lanes there and thinking about that time period. And then there's also From Lethal Weapons to Nice Guys, a video essay from Lee Singer, who talks a lot about Shane Black's works, as he does a lot of really great buddy cop movies. From that, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, of course, and The Nice Guys now. And then Always Bet on Black, archive featurette, which is, I think, came with the original Blu-ray. And then Worst Detective Ever, some archive featurettes, cast interviews, and some trailers. And along with that book, the 150-page hardback book, which I'm in the middle of. But this movie is one that I love it. It's a really great black comedy that just continues to bring a smile to my face with a great ensemble cast, and they work really, really well together, and they're just so much fun. I'd give this movie a 4.5 out of 5. Like, that's how much I love this movie. It's definitely one of Shane Black's best works, and it continues to impress me to this day. I'm just glad to finally have this amazing edition on 4K. So yeah, I definitely recommend people check this movie out if you've not seen it before. Let's actually stay in the Second Sight realm to a title that I actually just watched last night, mainly because I wanted to finish off all the Second Sight releases that I have on the shelf. And I have seen this movie a few times now, but I finally have the 4K of it, and it looks really, really good. And I'm actually in the middle of the interview. There's like an hour and like 15-minute interview that this director did, and I'm talking about the movie The Changeling right here. George C. Scott in this amazing, chilling 80s ghost story. Man, this is one of the best atmospheric horror stories out there. This movie is a lot like, I want to say, The Haunting from the 60s, mixed in with like Rebecca a little bit, especially the end. My God. But man, oh man, is this a great looking 4K. And this story is just this haunting. This story is of George C. Scott, who is dealing with the death of his wife and his kid. This happens in like the first scene of the movie, which is a shocking way to start a movie. But you see him take residence in this antique home. He's just renting it. And actually, here's the postcards. The postcards are actually quite stunning and also quite chilling, because there's a lot of scenes in here that are quite terrifying, even if it like comes across as cheesy. I want to say like this movie like does not, like, it holds up to this day. Like it's actually really, really well made in that sense. But I just love the artwork in this as well. Actually, here's some new artwork here. Like, it's just a gorgeous looking release. But you have the 4K of it, you actually have the Blu-ray, and you also have the soundtrack, which I can pop in if I want to in my 4K player if I want to listen. But I actually don't have a CD player, which is a little sad. It also comes with a booklet with some essays and just talking about the cast and crew. But yeah, I love this movie. It impresses me more and more every single time I watch it. I'd probably give it a 4 out of 5. It's a movie that it can easily become a 4.5 out of 5, I think, over time. I've seen this movie maybe 3 or 4 times now, and this is one that just still continues to chill me to this day. It's got some iconic scenes, it's got a great score and soundtrack, and it looks good on 4K. So check out The Changeling. If you've not seen this movie, do yourself a favor. This is one of the best ones. All right, so the next titles I want to talk about are actually all Japanese films, in fact, 2 trilogies, and it kind of made me go down this rabbit hole. The first one that I want to talk about, this trilogy, is actually one that I picked up when I was over in the UK last year around this time, and I have been making it a mission to kind of finish all of those titles before we get to the 52 mark. It's a little project of mine. I'm really close. I have like 4 titles left, I believe. But I'm talking about this trilogy. It is the Bounty Hunter trilogy, and this is from Radiance Films. This is spy numbers 46 and 47. It's got Killer's Mission, which is the first film in this trilogy, The Fort of Death, and 8 Men to Kill. and these are all directed by Shigehiro Ozawa and Ichi Kudo, which I believe has done quite a bit of other works. I think Ozawa is the only one who did like one film. Yes, Street Fighter's Ozawa, which we'll talk about Street Fighter here in a second because that's the other trilogy I watched. That actually made me go down the rabbit hole. But this is actually starring Tomisabara Wakayama, who I cannot say his name correctly, but he's in the Lone Wolf and Cub series. Is the like main character in that, and quite a menacing force. Even though he definitely looks like menacing, but like in a really atypical way. Like he's a little pudgy, but stout, I would say, is probably more accurate or apt. But it's really cool seeing him in these Yakuza type of samurai films. Like it's like a weird crossover of sorts, and I definitely know that there was definitely some influence into some movies that came out a little bit later. But Killer's Mission right here is the first movie with this. This came out in 1969 and is directed, like I said, by Ozawa, and is got Ichibe, who is our main killer right here, who is going on this mission to protect this local lord and from an uprising against the Dutch government, because the Dutch were one of the few people who contacted the Japanese around this time, and so it's got some really cheesy things going on with at least some actors that look Dutch, but they're not. But besides that, the action's really fun. It's actually pretty raw. I feel like this is actually like a really raw kind of interpretation of a lot of the samurai films that would come out prior to this, of course, the more traditional like Kurosawa films, but it had a little bit more machismo and a little bit more grit involved. So Killer's Mission was really fun. I'd probably give that a 3.5 out of 5. And then that moves on to the sequel, which is actually like a Seven Samurai ripoff of sorts, but a really fun one with a Gatling gun, some cannons, a lot of guns actually, and that is The Fort of Death, which is the second film in here. And I had mentioned Ozawa, who directed the Street Fighter franchise, was actually directing this particular film. So definitely has a fun time with it. I'd give this movie a 3 out of 5. This is a movie that is not as interesting as the original because it definitely feels like it's another story, but it feels like a continuation of this really fun character, and we're going into his adventures here. But I really enjoyed it. And then their last film he had was 8 Men to Kill, and this movie felt like kind of like a going up the ladder, fighting different opponents to complete this journey. So 8 Men to Film was the third film. Ichibe is hired to recover a cache of stolen gold from the government's mine, and this is actually the one that has a lot of gadgets in. And I hadn't mentioned this before, but there's actually a really strong James Bond influence on these films, and so there was a lot of spy elements that kind of put in here, some gadgets, but in like the samurai era, and that was a really interesting kind of combination of things, and I quite enjoyed it. And I think that this particular film, the last one, definitely put the gadgets above everything else, so it's not as interesting as the story itself, but there's definitely some really cool scenes in it. I'd give it a 2.5 out of 5. It's nothing too special, so it definitely goes from like the 3.5 all the way up to like a 2.5. They get progressively worse, but they're all really fun still, and I would definitely recommend this trilogy if you've not seen them before. But yeah, going back to the Street Fighter, that was actually what the next title I wanted to talk about was the Sony Chiba trilogy right here, the Street Fighter trilogy. And this is actually a trilogy that like I said, I kind of went down this rabbit hole. This is starring Takayama Tsurugi, and that is actually Terry in the American editions, because this actually has both the Japanese and the English titles. And the English ones, I actually watched a couple of the English ones, and on top of the Japanese, so I actually watched these like twice, both of them. I think all three, I watched 2 of the 3 in English as well, just kind of as the background after watching the original in Japanese. And they were really fun, but also a little off-putting because these movies, definitely the syncing is a little weird, and the actors who voice those characters definitely sound off. But I digress. They're still fun. But Sony Chiba, who is our main character, Terry, is incredible in this movie. He's one of these really rugged street fighters in this movie that is actually, when I say lovable, I mean that's definitely not the right word, because he is definitely kind of an SOB. He is somebody who's kind of a scumbag character, but he's like the rough bounty hunter type of character where you kind of like him because the other people around him are worse. And he's kind of a misogynistic character. He's got some problems. He's got some really interesting problems that I definitely would not say is a good thing about his character. But nonetheless, he is fighting all these bad people in really variously crazy ways. But this has the Street Fighter, the Return of the Street Fighter, and Street Fighter's Last Revenge. Again, these are very much like the Bounty Hunter. I would kind of go in sequential order in terms of how they kind of decrease in quality over time, because it just kept making sequels. I think the original is definitely the best of the bunch, probably a 3.5, while the other two are probably more like 2.5 out of 5s. They're not as fun. I'd say the second one is a little bit better, but it definitely has a character where they have this crazy haircut, and it's like a side detective type of story, and I don't like it as much. Let's just say that. But regardless, this is a really fun combination here of films. And what's interesting too is, I guess this influenced Quentin Tarantino quite a bit, and so much so that he actually put Sonny Chiba in the Kill Bill films, of course, as our main sword master, right? Who was able to gift the bride her Hattori Hanzo, and who is, Sonny Chiba. But it also was the first film to receive an X rating in the U.S. purely on account of its violence, which is kind of crazy, especially the first movie, because the first movie has some intense moments. There's a point where he grabs this guy's gonads and rips them out. He rips out a throat, and you can see that. It's pretty grotesque. I guess I'm numb to those types of things, which is probably not great. But it's definitely very violent in that regard, and very raw, but like it's also really fun. And I definitely would recommend watching these movies and just giving Sonny Chiba a chance, even if he is kind of an SOB in these roles. Now, the next movie I have is just kind of tangentially related, because I was watching the special features on these discs, and they had mentioned this movie. This came out a couple of years after, in 1975. Yep. And it's starring Robert Mitchum, and that is the Yakuza. And this is a title from the Warner Archive collection, one that I've had on my shelf for some years now. One I've been wanting to watch, but I feel like this was a good kind of transition, all these movies to this. But Robert Mitchum, who I think he got in trouble for having marijuana on him, and because of that struggles, especially the latter part of his career, he was put into positions where he didn't want to be in these different roles. But I could be wrong here, but I remember reading that in his biography. But the Yakuza came out of it in one of his latter films, and it's an interesting one because he is sent over to Japan on this mission, and it's actually starring, it's got writers Paul Schrader in here, Robert Towne as well, but Sidney Pollack directed this movie. But it's got an interesting premise. I definitely would recommend at least watching this movie. It's not something spectacular. It didn't really impress me that much, but I would give it a 3 out of 5. But as somebody who's a fan of Robert Mitchum and this tangentially related stuff right here, Yakuza / samurai films, of course I wanted to watch something like this. It's actually got some really intense scenes, especially for a much older Robert Mitchum, near the end of the film, that I really, really loved, and really kind of guns a-blazing is what I'll say. Crashing through screens, flipping tables, slashing people left and right, stuff like that. You'll have a good time with it, but it definitely feels more like a procedural, more so than it does kind of an action adventure film in these types of movies. So definitely recommend checking out the Yakuza if you can give yourself a chance. But yeah, great releases from Japan. So I had a really good time with those. And the last thing I want to talk about is season 2 of Ted Lasso, which I have been watching on and off again for the past 2 weeks. And man, oh man, is this show just bringing me a lot of happiness. With what's going on in the world right now, there's a lot of really bad things, especially in the States. I don't want to get into it, but I feel like Ted Lasso is a breath of fresh air in terms of mental health, like health and mental illness, and how it tackles a lot of these things. I just really enjoy the kind of, I don't know, the characters in this definitely tackle those types of stories in really unique ways, and it can bring a smile to your face and also make you laugh hysterically because of the absurdity of the situation. But it's all about this football club, this soccer club, if you will, you know, and how they're kind of getting along with each other and tearing apart at each other, and the things they're dealing with behind the field itself. Right? They're not just on the field; they're outside of it, in the locker room, in their towns and their homes, with their relationships, and dealing with their own demons. And I love this show, and man, it's getting increasingly better. I'm currently in the middle of season 3, which I've heard is really good as well, but I've heard season 2 is like the best part of this show. And I know they're filming season 4, or about to, and I think they're about to do it in Kansas City, which is near me, which is kind of crazy. I don't know if they should do season 4, but I know some of my friends are against it. But at the same time, I have not finished this entire series yet, so I don't know how it ends exactly. But I love this show, and I would recommend everyone watch this. This is a show I think everyone should watch. So yeah, Ted Lasso, season 2, incredible work. So that is all I watched for the past few weeks. I hope you enjoyed the titles that I picked up and the ones that I've watched. I want to know down in the comment section down below what you've been doing. I'm going to head over to North Carolina here next week, and I'm sure when I get back I have some stories to tell you. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. Give it a like, comment down below, share, hit the notification bell, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. I'm not joking around.